So, good afternoon, people. I'm Vedang Agnihotri. Welcome to the UXplorer 2021 live webinar. We are here today to felicitate our UX 2021 winners. This initiative is quite close to our heart. The purpose is to encourage and promote designs that would drive industry growth and enrich human lives. This competition provides opportunities for students, young design thinkers, to come forth and present their ideas that can make a difference. It is a bridge to enter the professional world with conviction. To tell you a bit more about UX Explorer, it was started 8 years ago. Throughout these years, students have showcased their unique human centered product ideas. UX Explorer is now among the most unique design competitions being held in India. Through UX Explorer, we have already collaborated with about 100 colleges so far. If the idea resonates with us, we will also try to fund your project. Not just that, but the gold winner from UX Explorer 2020, Vaishnavi, has been working with us as well. So, the world post pandemic has resulted in multiple problems that needed solving, and our view of the normalized world has changed. The ideal way to deal with this is to use these crises as a chance to connect with more purposeful future. Transformative design has now become a need of the hour. Our lives have changed during this global catastrophe. As we shift our perspective and find the solutions through creative thinking, let's see how we use this glitching present as the opportunity to design for the new normal. First of all, let me introduce you to our jury panel. Samir has a background in human machine interaction, an expert in business process and customer experience design. Prasad has helped product owners, managers throughout last 2 decades. He's the one we all turn to for any and every user research consulting. Both of them are driving force behind the company's competencies, operations, and high quality output. Unfortunately, due to some emergency, Samir won't be attending this webinar. Best wishes are with you all. However, we have Prasad with us to answer all your questions and guide you through your project and career in UX. Let's ask him how was it? How was his experience of judging the entries for this year?
Looking at the U Explorer submissions year on year, I think we have seen a drastic change in the initial years. I guess the quality was not as much as there as it is today. So kudos to you guys and kudos to all the design education that has sprung up across the country. Some of them are doing well, some of them are still kind of catching up and struggling with the right kind of a processes and whatnot. But my experience, it does really give me a kick to really see that someone has done a genuine investigation into what the problem really is. That's part of the story, half. And the second half is doing justice to that investigation. That, okay, I'm genuinely understanding the core problem and focusing only on that and then coming up with the design solution. It's very rare. So kudos to you guys, because we saw in your submissions they have tried to go to the core and solve the core problem. Uh, Otherwise, there are people who would, throw in interfaces and it looks good, but it doesn't solve the necessary real problem. So that's my experience, and that has always given me a kick of really finding out the needle in the haystack, especially someone who has done real, genuine work of understanding a business challenge, a user challenge, and coming up an equally uh, genuine design solution to solve the problem. Yeah, that's what I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Prasad. Without any further delay, let's look at our winners of UX Explorer 2021. On behalf of Huge Family, I congratulate all the winners. You've done a fantastic job. Now let's have a look at our bronze winning project, Lian Gonzalez. Over to you, Lian.
Um, Hello, everyone, and my name is Leanne. Hope everyone is having a good day today. I'm very delighted. I'm very happy to be here, and today I'll be presenting my project, which is Specify. So, uh, today I'm going to walk you through my presentation about what I've done and what problem that I'm trying to solve here. So, as per some rough estimates, a car only runs for some 400 hours on average in a year, which also means that it is parked for the rest of the time. That is 8,360 hours. With rapid growth of metro cities all over the world, the parking generation rate goes on increasing. And in recent years, with the rapid development of economy and exorbitant increase in the motor vehicles, parking problems in the urban areas of metro cities have become increasingly prominent. In many urban areas, the illegal parking is also a very common problem, which is hazardous to traffic safety. And because of poor parking and management, India struggles with chaotic situations like overcrowded footpaths, illegal parking, and criminal activities. Uh, and due to improper surveillance. So now let's take a look at some of the most pressing issues. Uh, it's the previous slide. Can you go on? Yeah. So the first issue that I want to walk you through is saturated parking spaces, and it is one of the most common problem today because vehicles continue to outnumber the people in the city, and thus it clogs roads. So incidences of violence have arisen because people fight over parking space, and that's common, and that we get to see every single day, and even deformed cars due to space crunch. So that is a first problem. The second problem is that of unregulated tariffs. So an unregulated tariff structure leads to scarcity of parking spaces. In Indian metros, parking is either free or it is minimally priced. And the fees are unregulated everywhere. So it can be 30 rupees at a parking spot A, it's 50 rupees at parking spot B, and all are the same. And most of these parking spots are illegal. So it is not owned by any municipal corporation or any government body. And so, for instance, Mumbai charges the same parking fee as it did 15 years ago. So it's remained the same, and it has one of the lowest tariffs in the world. Now, this is a very big problem because parking is a scarce commodity today, and it should come with a price. So a low parking price encourages more vehicles on the road, and which contributes to air and noise pollution. And the best way to manage this is by putting the right price for it, and this can be done by using the demand to to price parking and then optimize occupancy. The next one is the on-street versus off-street parking. Another problem because most people try to park on the road and then sprint and go towards the shop. At some point, you have done it. I have done it. So we park and we are like, okay, 2 minutes. I have to do this. I have to get this work done, and we go. We run to the shop and we come. So this causes a lot of problem because it causes traffic congestion. It causes long queues. So on-street versus off-street parking is a major problem. Second is cruising, like you drop a person at a spot X and then you can't find a parking space. So you try to maintain that slow speed of like 20 or 30 kilometer per hour, and then you just go around, try to find a parking space. So again, this causes a lot of traffic congestion. Then parking in residential areas. Now, residential apartments almost always see the construction of parking spaces because they think that if there's no parking space in a residential area, then what's the point of buying something so costly or investing in it? And so this increases the overall cost of construction, which becomes worse uh, if the parking space is unoccupied. And residents also suffer from spillover parking because of commercial visitors and excessive vehicle ownership. Now, parking on special occasions such as festivals or festivals, it causes unending traffic. In Mumbai here, especially due to Ganesh Chaturthi, there's you know there are there's like I think a 15-kilometer parking queue, and I'm not even exaggerating on it. So it causes a lot of problem, a lot of traffic congestion, and it puts immense pressure on parking spaces. Uh, the next slide. Okay. So the first graph that you see is of Delhi. So in Delhi, as you can see, the population growth is just 1.4%, whereas the vehicular growth has been over 7%. And the second image here is taken from Economic Times. So Delhi has been on a on the vehicular rise since since many years. And the demand for Indian metro cities is seeing no signs of stopping because Indian land resources are limited, and it is not possible to conveniently plan parking spaces according to some people's demand. So instead of increasing available parking spaces, an effective technology based solution can be employed to optimize the use of available parking space. And so for that, we propose Specify. Uh, Next slide. Yeah. So, Specify is a parking app that will find a parking spot near you, and it'll help you park. It'll give you directions to that parking spot. So, which we'll see in the further slides. So, Specify is a mobile app for parking in metro cities and prominently in India, and also primarily tier 1 and tier 2 cities. And it uses sensor based technology to detect a parking spot near you. And it offers total flexibility and control, and it offers you parking in real time, which is great because parking is a lot of problem, and especially payments are a lot of problem because when you park they give you a tariff, and it's usually a small paper in which the details are written. So once you put it in your pocket, you just forget about it. It just gets crumbled, it gets torn, and then there's no way out. So when you have to show it to get your vehicle actually out, it becomes a lot of problem. It becomes quite messy. So everything is digital payment and everything. And yeah, it detects parking spots near you within your given radius, and it offers you flexibility and control. Next one. Now, as we saw the problems in the previous slide before, so here we validate the problem. So most of the times there is little or probably no space to park at all. The parking signs are confusing to many. Like for Mumbai, if in South Bombay, not in the suburbs, but in the South Bombay, they've adopted this odd even parking on the roads. So for someone like me who has a right left problem, it's very confusing. Like how to do it and where to do it. So the parking signage is very confusing, and most map applications they don't show a parking spot, and there is no control or flexibility offered in real time. And people usually tend to forget the area in which the vehicle is parked, especially if they're visiting that area for the first time. And they again most parking places offer physical tokens and tariffs, which I mentioned earlier. So it all boils down to this one solution is the ability to find a parking spot and the ability for us to park. Now, and for a smart technology to locate a parking spot near you. So basically, the whole solution is to make an app which will help you park and which will make your life easier. So next. Now, here we go into the backend of the app. I'll explain this in a short. So in the first figure, we can see that the first figure is that of a parking lot. Now, there are four primary actors involved here. The first one is the parking sensor, second being the processing unit, the third one is the mobile interface, and the fourth one is the cloud. So now for a parking system like for us to operate, the sensors such as infrared and ultrasonic can be used. Now the primary job of the sensors is to detect a parking spot and to sense if the area is vacant or not, and then it will send the information to the processor. Now for the processor, we can use a simple processor such as a Raspberry Pi. The chip will act as an intermediate between the sensor and the cloud. The mobile interface is for us to see if the parking space is available or no, and for the end users to interact with the system. And the cloud will act as a database to store all the records related to parking areas. So it keeps a track of every user connected to the system, and it maintains information such as time, duration, mode of payment, and the amount that was paid. So all of this is the backend using Internet of Things. Now, for my research, I I took these two methods of research. First one is interviewing, and the second is surveys. For my interviews, I asked questions such as do you prefer driving your vehicle or using public transport, or do you plan your travel every day? and if you do, then how you do it, and either way, how does that affect your daily schedule? Then do you like, if you want to go to a place, do you keep a buffer time that you're going to take so and so time to park, so you will leave accordingly? So, such type of questions were asked to analyze the behavior of the interviewees, and the insights that are gathered from these most of the people are always in a rush, and they finding a parking spot at their desired place has become more and more difficult due to it. The second insight is there is no proper signs on the road, which confuses the driver whether to park their vehicle or no. And the third one is people, they lack the tools, so there are no proper applications, and even the map applications such as Google Maps, uh, they don't give search, they don't yield results like if there's a parking if there's a vacant parking space. So such were the insights that were gathered. Now, from my qualitative and quantitative analysis, 98% of the people, they didn't use any app for parking. 39% of the people were in the age group of 18 to 25. So this was my second, which also makes my secondary demographic. Uh, 42% they spent 5 to 10 minutes finding a parking spot. The rest of them, they either found a parking spot immediately, or they took more than 10 minutes, like 10 to 15 minutes, to find a parking spot. 53% use their vehicle as a mode of conveyance. They prefer their own vehicle traveling rather than using a public transport, because it offers them freedom and it offers them freedom of time. 85% they had trouble finding a parking spot on a random weekend outing. So they just made up their mind and left, but they couldn't find a parking spot. And 97%, which is most of them, they owned a car or a bike. Uh, Now, most people, they didn't consider parking on the road due to the fear of the vehicle being towed or stolen. So I think stolen is not really a problem here, because people were more fearful of their vehicle being towed, because they have to pay hefty fines. Then most of them, they didn't travel their plan ahead, because the people, they lacked tools, and there were no conventional apps that could show them that there's a parking space available. And people would prefer being assisted to their parking spot than just cruising along the way and then finding it on their own. And for people with disabilities and or pregnant women, a parking spots near the gate of a mart or a mall or any public space, it should be made necessary, which now many malls and many public spaces are adapting to. Okay, now we get into the UI. So for a UI, the first is a logging and onboarding screen. So the logging and the onboarding screens will show you how to go on with the app and what it does. So you can either skip it, or you can it will walk you through the entire process of booking. Um, Next one. Yeah. The next is providing users information. So you need to enter your information, and then when OTP and everything is generated, you can enter your vehicle details. So it will ask you for your chassis number and your car number, your vehicle type, your model type, and everything. So all of that information will be stored here. Then we search for a parking spot. So it will use your GPS and it will locate the parking spot near you. So there's already a predefined radius of this app in which it will search, and then you can choose whichever one you want to. So if you feel that a parking spot A is near to you than a parking spot B, then you can choose that. So once you choose a parking spot, it will show you. Yeah, it'll show you the slots that are available, and then you can book your slot accordingly. For example, I want to book a slot, say B4 in the second row. So after I book it, I can choose the vehicle that I'm taking. So you can enter how many vehicles ever you want to, and then I can choose the vehicle that I'm going to take there, and then I can choose my mode of payment, and then I can pay. Yeah, so once everything is paid and everything is done, your parking spot is booked. You can go to that slot, and then it also has features such as if you're new to that place and if you feel that you're lost and if you want to track your vehicle, so you can also track your vehicle back to where it is. Now, a problem here is, suppose a person A and a person B, there are two persons. A person A has booked a parking spot for 1 hour, but is not taking that much of time and wants to leave, say, in 30 minutes. So a buffer timer could be set. For example, 5 minutes could be set. So after he leaves, the sensors will detect that the person has left, and a buffer time of 5 minutes is provided. So the next person can receive the notification, or can book the parking spot in which the person A has left from. So that could also be done. And yeah, thank you. That was my presentation.
Thank you, Lian. It was a great presentation.
Thank you.
Now, let me ask Prasad if he has any thoughts on the project.
Yeah, well, I have a few questions and some observations as well. But before I do that, Lian, do you have any questions for me?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Okay. Uh, so I want to ask you this, that do you think that AI will replace the roles of UX designers in the future?
Oh, no, I don't think so. No way that's going to happen. But yes, it will definitely um, throw a doubt in the UX designer's mind that, oh, with this technology, changing rapidly, and when you say artificial intelligence, the thinking is done by the machine. Would it think the way we think it? And if you really see, that's not how AI would work, right? Because AI would be doing the job what you instruct them to do. There is an element of machine learning, though, which kind of starts learning a certain pattern and starts taking decision. But even that is configured by humans. Now, that's one high level story of AI and machine learning.
Um,
But when you say, yeah, are our jobs under threat? There are in two, three places at a very high level. For example, um, there are certain flows, and I will give you a very basic example. Sign up screens and setting screens and notification, all those don't need big UX thinking that maybe we needed 10 years back. Those flows are automated. So yes, that way, if you were doing a project, certain piece will never come to you because you don't need to think about those flows because that has been engineered. For example, in 2009, when I was with PayPal and the eBays and the Amazons in the Bay Area, every page was thoroughly reviewed and tested, and the $1 billion was spent on it to get the design right. And in those days, eBay and Amazon both were fighting for, oh, whether to go for auction or whether to go and let people buy only new things. That was the trend, and I'm not sure if you know the history of these companies. um, why am I saying this? Because their uh, user experience design, testing, doing user research, a lot of thinking went into informing these pages. But over a period of time, right? Buying flows, search results pages, uh, uh, how search behaves, all those things have become a pattern. You can't now throw a different looking e-commerce website in front of the users. However creative it could be, people will say, I just can't use it because it's not my predicted flow. And hence AI will start replacing looking at patterns of designs that are successfully working for the users and automate them. So businesses will say, oh, these flows, let's automate them. Don't even need UXers. Then where do we need UXers? I think UXers now I see completely moving away from wireframing. I see completely them moving from mockups creations that you would do. Not that they will not do these, but the percentage of time that you will spend on this would be way too minuscule than what we did 5 years back. And so that's a mindset change that I would urge UXers to do because they need to get a seat at the table where business strategies happen. So X company, maybe whether it is a startup or even a huge conglomerate like, let's say, ICICI Bank. Yeah. Now imagine, let's now that we are talking about ICICI Bank. Um, and I'm using this opportunity to address all the people who are joining in, so that they also kind of get to see the perspective that we are tabling here. Imagine ICICI Bank, and they say, hey, you know what? We have applications for the mobile applications to do, but here is a use case. There are people, there are students, right? uh, who would do the right job of true UX consultant. Because here's another. Again, some of you or most of you may not know, but if you know, please raise your hands or turn on your videos. But last 10 years, the industry was full of visual designers and graphic designers, because I also come from that same school, so no difference there. And today all of them on their resumes would put UX designer, right? Because they touch certain aspects of user experience design. But user experience design, as you guys would have done, right? You've gone to the field, you've applied your analytics, you have synthesized the problem, come up with the solution, which needs a lot more thinking. is still absent, and that is with at least 80% of the people in the market. So though the saturation is high, the demand for the right UX designers is going to be extremely high, and it's going to be painful for the right designer to be in the right place, because a good UX designer in a wrong place is does justice to none, because you will be not working in a right environment, because they would say ha chalo ye UI karke do and these guys feel, oh, this is what user experience is, and so they get something which is not which is mediocre, because they had a release to make, so they within a 1 week they asked you to design some screens. So both of them are at loss. And that's, I think that's where the market is heading, and this is round the corner, because I can already sense when I'm dealing with my customers that there is this huge gap.
And my last question to you is, does adding too many animations ruin the usability of a product? Or going on with the current UI trends, do you think it messes with the whole UX of the product?
I'm glad you have some very interesting questions that I was not anticipating. So you're very interesting. And my comments on your project are completely off the table, but great. Uh, I strongly believe that animations are okay. They're nice as far as they're minimal, and the designer um, has thought about the psychological impact of that animation. And animation at a different levels, right? A small throbber that comes when the screen is loading, or some small transition when you're going from one page to another, or an animation to essentially depict a story or tell a sequence. It really matters how thoughtfully you have applied it versus a feel good, because feel good, the moment you say, hey, as a designer I feel this is good, let's animate this, you might be on a wrong path, because this is not what the users would be expecting, because the user's task is what users are very curious to know. How can I quickly do my task and get away, right? While imagine, while you're booking your parking lot, there are some nice fancy animations that are happening. If they're not required, you are going to say, what the heck, I don't like this app. However, it could be a genuine attempt. So that's my response to you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So quick ones on and Vedang, I know we are probably running behind time. For stop me next time. But two three things, Leon, for you. I was not very sure if you have tested and validated this design. Number one, have you also validated this design thinking of the system design that you have done with the authorities of the parking lots? Because not all parking lots are illegal, or the pricing is, I think, regulated in some places. I think I've witnessed some of those areas. Maybe if you have done that, maybe you will see a different take, the way government looks at it, or any parking authorities take a look at it. So those were two of my questions. And when you did user research, I felt there could have been a little more deeper research of understanding the psychodynamics of the user's behavior. I think I somehow it maybe you would have done it. Maybe it didn't come out through the presentation, because there were a lot more nuances that you could have gathered, which would have put your design in a different league altogether. Your questions were more or less, hey, how long do you travel, da 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 da. So the questions could have been much more deeper. Whenever we do user research workshop, maybe you could join us, and we can explore the real tricks and tips of conducting user research. So that those were some of my thoughts that I've written down here.
Thank you, Prasad. I hope, Leanne, all the questions were answered.
Yes,
Uh,
thank you.
so let's move ahead and have a look at our silver winners, Aditya Bansal and Yamini Gupta. You may take over and present your project.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, and I'm Yamini Gupta, and my partner Aditya Bansal, and we're from the design department at Delhi Technological University. Firstly, we would like to extend our gratitude to everyone at YJ Design Studio for providing us with this opportunity. And today we'll be presenting to you Corona Kavach Abhiyan, India's answer to COVID-19. So, out of the 236 million cases per date worldwide, no two cases of COVID 19 have been the same in nature. Every case has exhibited its own mannerisms based on the lifestyle and the pre health conditions of the patient. And COVID 19, a little background data, affects mainly three major organs, which is the lungs, heart, and the brain. It leaves a lasting impact on these organs as people contract deadly diseases such as pulmonary fibrosis and cardiac injury, which has led to millions of deaths in a year worldwide. These physical health conditions also leave a lasting impact on your mental health, which is another cause of concern. We have hence attempted to establish as to why we need to research upon, why we felt that we had to research upon these complications, because it's not just a physical loss that we are facing, we're also facing a lot of mental health strain, and which is something that we felt we had to cater to. So the present healthcare system in India is highly grappled with issues such as internet connectivity, lack of expenditure, etc. India's healthcare has also highly been criticized internationally by WHO, which is why it leaves a wide scope of improvement for us to work on. And for example, Indians do not have access to good internet. So especially in COVID, since everything has been under a lockdown, so internet has been a lifeline for everyone. But since there's a huge gap, uh, lots of Indians have struggled because of that, and the ratio between the doctor and the citizens is also extremely sad to notice. See, it's 1 to 10,000. The solution pre-COVID for medical research to be gathered was through electronic health record portals. Now, these portals have their own limitations. However, they have various advantages as well. They streamline data well and record it as such that it can be accessed from anywhere. So, for our starting point, rather than completely eradicating electronic health records and to see which way to go forward to, we it led us to the direction for us to reimagine the portal system rather than completely replace it. So all these points discussed posed as challenges. So data privacy of patients, low internet penetration, like I discussed, and data input and storage that we decided as a team to work on, and which we then turned into opportunities. Next slide. Which we then turned into opportunities. We ideated as to what we could do for each and every issue. So we thought of blockchain encryption and OMR sheet system and PSP server-like system. Next, the process that we followed was the double alignment process. We discovered and researched the problem. We defined our opportunities and user set. We ideated what all could be done, and then we arrived at a solution. This brings us to our need statement, which is to develop a system that can help patients, doctors, medical officials, and researchers track COVID-19 health complications over the years. So let us look at the personas now. We have Dr. Prisha Sonowal, who is a cardiologist at AIIMS. She wishes to have a fulfilling personal and professional life and not wasting time in bureaucratic work such as book maintenance. Next, we have Dr. Shanavasti, who runs a small clinic in Rohtak. He's a successful, brilliant doctor. However, he's not very tech savvy. Moreover, where he practices, the internet is unreliable and available only for a few hours of work. Mr. Ratan Shah, our patient, contracted COVID in May 2020 and is apprehensive about his health. He needs to go for an annual health checkup to get his sugar test done. And lastly, we have Dr. Namita Singh, a medical researcher working on COVID-19 and its complications. She receives consolidated blockchain encryption from all hospitals, which is then visualized in various formats. So though there are multiple parties to work with, as mentioned here, we will be discussing the four primary stakeholders and how they interact with each other. This is the stakeholder map that connects all the stakeholders, and this is the heart and soul of our entire project. Can you move to the next? Excuse me. So let us now see how that stakeholder mapping plays out in this scenario. So this scenario, the MAPS system is the patient gets to know about incentivized testing that the government is providing and visits a hospital or a clinic. The establishment, based on whether they have internet or not, publishes the report as an OCR sheet or uploads it directly to the portal. The patient can get a hard copy of the logbook, or they can have their reports published online directly. Using these two media, the patient can keep a progressional track of their health and then go to hospital whenever they need consultation. All this information will hence be made available to researchers and health officials. Aditya Bansal, my teammate, will now be walking you through the portal design.
Hello everyone. So now I'll go through like what are the different solution parts that we developed. So the first part that we basically ideated was a solution for doctors. And when I'm saying for a solution of doctors, we primarily ideated two things. One is then portal and electronics health record portal, and the other part is like the OMR booklet for doctors. First, I'll discuss about the portal, why we developed this thing, and what are the major problems that this portal solves. So currently there are a lot of EHR portals available on the market, but they are mostly by private players, and they come at a cost. So even if when we talk to doctors, even if like there is a lot of portals already available and solutions already available in the market, but many of the doctors who specifically are like who practice individually don't use anything, and they somehow like try to get some free softwares, or like some doctors do, but some doctors don't even do that. So there was definitely a major gap, major loopholes, major basically I would say gaps only between this whole system of using an electronic health records portal. And one of the major gap was like if a data of patient, I need to transfer that data from doctor A to doctor B, I couldn't able to do so. So that's why we ideated that there needs to be a government backed common EHR portal apart from the private ones that can help basically uh, create a standard of how the data needs to be collected and how the data needs to be stored. So next slide please. Yeah, so this is just a visual representation of how the portal could look like for doctors. For example, if they go into the patient management, they could view all data of a particular patient. They could feed the data, and if they want to transfer the profile to someone a different hospital, to a different location, they can do so as well. Next slide. If they want to download a report, a manual report to be given to the patient, they could do so that as well. Next slide. So now, just as I said, like not every doctor will have uh, access to technology. Like even though we are moving towards a very technologically self-sufficient nation, but still there are a lot of doctors that don't have access to internet, and even if they have access to internet, they don't have the required technical knowledge to operate such portals. And even if you have all these things in place, there will be situations and there will be a lot of situations specifically in small towns and villages where you don't have the required internet connectivity, or if you as a doctor don't know how to operate portal, but there is some guy, maybe someone in your family, or someone from the hospital staff that usually does the job for you. So what we ideated was a OMR health record sheet for doctor, so they can keep in OMR format the records of each patient, and that would basically help them to scan the data to the portals with the ease. They don't have to basically, this would require a much low technical knowledge, and if there is, for example, low internet connectivity, they couldn't operate the portal, they could store the data through these sheets. Next slide. So now the next part of the solution was the solution for the patients. It was important that patients have a common health ID. So what we ideated was user irrespective of like their location, or like everyone has a Aadhaar card. So what we ideated was that Aadhaar card only would act as a unique health ID, and any user, any Indian citizen can simply register using the Aadhaar card on the platform. Next slide. And this portal for patient will be used for multiple things. Two primary things it will be used for: to view all of the health data fed by the doctor or fed by themselves, and if they want to download their health records, because if they want to present it to someone else, they could do so. And if they are not feeling well or want to know the tips regarding some health tips or all those things, they can do that as well. Next slide. This is a representation of how there will be a specific option for tell us how you are feeling. The main goal for this option was that if you are not feeling well, you might be confused like where you should go, you might not know the answer, like should you approach if you want to exactly know like what's the problem with your body. So what you can do is simply go to this section, and there will be a basic questionnaire that will at least give you some basic insights like whether you should go to doctor or not. So these are the some helpful things that can be solved by the portal, but again, like it's a web portal, so not everyone would be interested enough to basically go onto the web, and not everyone will have the laptop to basically access the same. So, and that's a very like that's a very real problem. So extension of this portal is like whatever smartphone you are using. Like India is approaching towards I think 400 or 500 million smartphone users. So everyone or at least one guy in the family owns a smartphone now. So with their existing health apps, they could we could also link the benefits of the patient portal with the existing health app, so that they can log in into the app and see their all their health report, their data from that as well. Next slide. Similarly, just like doctors, not everyone will have the access to internet, to technology. So for those who don't have, uh, part of the corona kavach abhiyan scheme, we ideated that government needs to basically distribute a medical physical medical record booklet to every citizen of the nation. So what this will help is like if you are not like interested in, or if you don't know how to operate the technology, the portal and stuff, you could still have the physical health record booklet with you that will help you keep a track record of all of the things. For example, if you have, because of COVID, you basically have the problem of blood pressure, so you could simply record the blood pressure readings time to time, so that you know like where you are going wrong. Next slide. And like the previous slide. Yeah. So the last section of the ecosystem, the solution was to how we will targeting the research part. So the data that we will collect from both phone, physical booklets, doctor portal and patient portals, we aim to create a common space where all this data is presented, so that this data can be further used for policy making, for researchers to basically make conclusions, for making vaccines, for making all kind of research work that anyone wants to do. Next slide. Yeah, it's for implementation. Like this is the flow of how we aim it to basically how we aim that this should be implemented. Basically, there will be interaction between all of the stakeholders. Data is collected into electronic health record portal that is ideated, and it's stored in blockchain encryption. The benefits of blockchain encryption is basically the data is decentralized and can be accessed by anywhere at any time, and there are timestamps so that you can know like who edited it. And for to reach people, like this is a movement that we did, basically a service movement. I think the easiest solution would be through advertisements, mass advertisement, TV advertisements, or to basically update like the existing portals, or all these things like. But we still feel like advertisement would be one way to reach people. When we created the prototypes for the same, the initial prototypes, we also tested it to different a couple of users to see whether are they able to use it or not. Next thing. This was a future roadmap. How we see Corona Kavach Abhiyan is 10 years, is to basically add features to include more stakeholders and include more users. For example, we could develop a SMS based portal for greater inclusivity, and we could implement the integrations with smartwatches for tracking and all those things. Next slide. Yeah, so this is the impact that we aim to create: save lives through early detection, inclusivity of people who don't have access to technology through OMR sheets and all, to physical health record booklets, and to collect the data so that that helps in research and creating better solutions for future. Yeah, so this was our solution, Corona Kavach Abhiyan by Team Hexco. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya and Yamini. That's quite a unique take on the time relevant topic. So, Prasad, your insights on the project, what interested you the most? And I would suggest you give the feedback first and then we can take up the questions.
Sure, I will. Thanks, Vedant. Yeah, this. Just wondering, what was your age when you took these pictures? Very, very young. What was the reason for doing so? Very interesting.
I was 1 year old younger than I am right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Man, this project seemed to have made you into adults. The content was awesome. The I was very curious to know what made you take up this project, and not just the project, but the all the efforts that you have taken to get to the real data. I will not talk much about the design today, but why did you do this so much of legwork and deep dive?
I think basically we ourselves felt the need that there needs to be a solution, like in my family because of COVID and everyone's family around us. We saw that how people are developing long term COVID complications. So that was the idea, like we need to do something for the same. And why we deep dived is because I think half of the solution, we get to half of the solution if we correctly find the problem. So specifically in this case, where the target was not to basically create a UI, rather to create a service, it was important to deep dive to understand all of the stakeholders that are involved in the process, like to all of the actors that are that make the tracking possible, and that basically make us prepare for a future requirement. So
Mm.
the main goal was to find those actors like who are involved in this process.
Yeah. 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 Uh, there was, a moment where you mentioned, yeah, people may not necessarily enter the data, and then there was also a manual entry where you had said maybe the doctors would kind of take mark, like typical of how they do today. Um, and then you move to mobile, and then you move to the fact that hey, it could be any illness or sickness, and the doctor should be able to enter the data. The whole efforts of putting the data for you, for the doctor, is an additional task. um, there's a high possibility that I will let the user do it, or I would probably not do it, or I will have my assistant do it. And this is a weaker link in the entire process. How do you feel? What's your thinking as to what could be those motivation factors for me to do it very willingly, genuinely, for the sake of truth versus हाँ नहीं चलो अभी मेरे पास बहुत पेशेंट है मैं नहीं एंटर करता हूँ या कोई भी आया है अलाना फलाना कस्टमर सो मे बी आई कैन स्किप इट.
Uh, One way we targeted to solve this is whatever data you put into the system, the same data can be viewed by the patient on the patient portal. So, for example, if a doctor is like, hey, I am basically putting wrong data, for example, the patient could immediately know like what are the fields, like what are the data that the doctor has inputted. So if there's something that is not right, they can reach out to doctor. Definitely there are a lot of loopholes if as a human we basically don't want to, or are busy with our own like different work, and we are not interested in like taking care of the data, and that is a very valid problem. Apart from that, I think how like your question is like people might not be interested to feed in information, like there is a lot of task, there's a lot of information that's needed to be feed in. But I think for long term complications, it is actually required that the health records is regularly maintained.
Yeah, yeah. These are issues where it's not chronic. Because when the moment it is chronic, yes, you have to enter the data for consistency's sake. But even today, if you ask me, right, if I get to see a history of all the illnesses that I had in the last 20 years, well, it could be anything. There could be a completely astonishing data that I would get, that there could be a correlation of, my, travel to my, gastro attack to the tooth extraction or to something else over a period of time, even at this age. And as this goes, there could be a pattern that could be recorded. But if none of this get recorded, then it kind of becomes a very sketchy issue when we are saying about entering the data. Chronic, I understand, chronic to karna hi hai, and hopefully the doctor feels responsible, but not for some of the other things that we discussed.
So actually adding to that, one point that I think was missed in the presentation, the future roadmap, and especially the phone application screens that you saw. So the main purpose behind the phone application was that it was actually the Apple Health Watch data. So the integration that is something that we added at a later stage, was that Apple Health already collects a lot of information. So it collects your heartbeat, it collects your pulse, it collects a lot of things. And
Mhm.
and even in watches now you also have the oxygen levels, right? SpO2. So that is
Mm.
something that I personally check a lot in my smartphone, in my phone, whenever I wake up. What was my health? What was my oxygen throughout the day?
Sure.
So, which is something that for this specific thing only, that we thought that we will include So the data can be shared from those health applications towards Corona Kavach Abhiyan. So if there's a sudden dip in the oxygen level, that is something that gets highlighted in your reports, and that
Mm.
data gets sent to your doctor as well. Other thing that we noted was that within 1.5 year medical science, the systems that all the doctors have advanced a lot. So even the personal doctor that even a very small doctor that I used to go to that did not have a huge establishment, they have shifted completely towards video conferencing and scheduling of that thing. So they have started keeping
Yeah.
calls. So for keeping it at a long term thing, we thought that.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Congratulations, guys. It
Thank you.
was a great interaction. If you have any question, you can feel free to ask Prasad.
Yeah, I would actually love to ask you a question. What is your go-to advice for how to build a timeless product?
Timeless?
Timeless product. Do you believe that a product can ever be timeless actually, for that matter?
Yeah, we will have to probably say time, and there's barely people have any time left, right? Yeah, things are evolving by the day. So just as a business parallel, right? Some companies which were for 40, 50 years in let's take this famous example, right? Reliance Industries. They were always doing 40, 30 years. They just did oil, nothing else but oil, and natural gas and all that stuff. But today they are into the geos of the world and whatnot, right? Every possible avenue, uh, and that's on the industry front. But even with the product, right? We saw a mobile phone that started, and now it is almost like a completely digital computer sitting in your pockets. So it's evolving, and so there's not one product which we can say will work continuously in the same shape and size, of course, but it will evolve. And in our projects also, something that we designed 2 years back, today, um, it's, I would not say it's redundant, but because we have so much of digitization, user needs also further keep changing.
Mm,
and and the market value, so there are two things. One is genuine user needs, and then there is one which is, business differentiator. And business differentiator sometimes are created needs. You induce some needs, understanding the psychology or the human behavior. Like for example, the way iPhone was brought in, uh, someone thought about it that its phone doesn't need to be just phone, it could have technology built into it, and no one knew the way it would be here. And it is changing the way our lives are evolving around it. So a single product may transit into so many other things that by the 10th generation you will realize that it's not the same product as the first one. So as UX designers, you'll have to, the moment you're done with your first release, you'll have to talk about what's next. That's one way of looking at it. But I feel as a designer, instead of working for one product company, uh, work for a company that dwells into the realm of user experience design, which could be physical products, digital products, system design, service design. That it makes you a holistic designer versus, oh, I'm just designing for one product for 5 years or 10 years.
absolutely.
Super. Thank you for those insights, Prasad. Now we'll congratulate our gold winners, Aditi Bhatt and Kasturi Thakre.
Thank you. So, hello everyone. Good afternoon. Very happy to be here. My name is Kasturi, and this is my partner Aditi Bhatt, and we are from IIT Guwahati. I hope you can see and hear me well. Just a quick check. Okay,
Yep.
great. Right. Okay. So, how did we start with Jab Jago Tab Savera? It has quite a personal connect with both of us. It stemmed from this discussion we were having one fine day in our hostel rooms, and one thing led to the other. And I think that both of us resonate with us especially, and everybody can connect to this is because of
the situation we are in right now, the new normal that we call it, it's so different, and everything, our way of life has changed drastically. And so, one aspect that we wanted to focus on is the role information plays in all of this. And as active citizens of India, there's so much turmoil going on. There's so many things floating around, and that's what we were discussing. And that is when we thought that, hey, is this a design problem? Is this something UX can solve? And that is how one thing led to the other, and that gave to the birth of this project. So yeah, now that we know that, okay, this is something design can solve, how is it that we can fix this? What is it that we can truly do? Right. So to start with, we hold on, I'll just pause for a moment. Yeah. So I think this is something that all of us would have some stories around. For example, there was this old rumor floating around, and which started causing riots in Bangalore, or when the lockdown had just started, and everybody started panic buying because they thought the country is going to shut down. We won't have food. We won't have toilet paper, and small snippets of information that spread through WhatsApp can cause so much problem, right? And so that is how all of it began. But the thing is that we've heard most people say that all fake news is not about socioeconomics or politics or religion. So why is it harmful? It's just funny. And yeah, we say that this is dangerous because what this influx of information is doing to all of us is that it's this noise that's blocking the real genuine information. And then once we get into this herd mentality, once we get into this mindset of believing what we receive, believing all the inputs, that is when it becomes truly dangerous, that it's easy to get manipulated. Right. So even before we decided that, hey, this is what we want to target and this is explicitly what we want to do, we decided to read a little bit more, research a bit more. And the topics we touched upon were psychology, technology, socioeconomics, and politics, because it is a complex problem and there's no one set way to understand or solve this. Right. So one interesting a piece of, say, data that I would like to share with you is that we refer to a couple of reports and we saw what is it really out there, what are the insights that big companies who have done research on are noticing. Is that the online news? So you can see this online news has outpaced print by a significant margin. And even though print news is something that's monitored, there are journalists, it's a verified source of information, so as to say online news is not. So there's a mismatch, you see, between what you consume, what you believe on, what's monitored, what's not. And I think the funniest part that comes after this is um, right, yeah. So the funniest part that comes after this is that who should solve this problem? And majority of the people think that it should be somebody else. It should be the publishers, the journalists, the government. It's never me, it's never us. So that is how the entire story started taking a root. And now I'll come down to three main case studies that we studied. And although these may not look seemingly steadfastly related to our cause, so as to say, we derived some quite interesting outputs from this. So first is the Savdhan Rahe, Satark Rahe, and it's on disinformation. So it's about how Nazism took root, and it started with little snippets of fake information, wrong things that you slowly start to believe, and then gradually hardens over time. The second one is Bujho To Jano. So this is slightly more sinister. This is when Corona had started, and it was all about bats and Chinese people. And then there were so many rumors floating around that there were horrible atrocities committed against people from the Northeast and marginalized communities. So that is when you really start to notice that, okay, this has a deeper issue. And the last one is Asman se gire to khajur mein atke. So, so this is, I think all of you must remember this. So what happened is Snapchat CEO once made a comment saying ki, no, our product is not for poor people. India is a poor country, blah blah blah, and to show retaliation, although well intentioned, people had started uninstalling Snapchat. But unfortunately, in this misinterpretation of sorts, what also happened is that they started on our very own homegrown, homebred Snapdeal, which had nothing to do with Snapchat and Snapchat CEO. So yeah, those are the three main case studies. Yeah, then now is this phase where we know, okay, this is the canvas in front of us, and now what do we do? So, four main things: understand what the problem is, what is the outcome that we want to come at, what are the important aspects, are there any constraints that.
Kasturi, sorry to interrupt you. I'm still seeing point number 2, which is the misinformation of the Northeast case. Is the slide moving ahead?
Yeah,
Is
I'm at
this
the planning brief.
Yeah, it's kind of frozen, so I'm not sure.
I'm able to see
Maybe
the
you
next.
can, yeah, you can stop and start searching, so sharing again.
Okay, let me do it again, maybe. I hope you all can see defining the brief section.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
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 Prasad,
Should I continue? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
So the third aspect is what are my constraints, and lastly, what if? And that is how we boil down to what our brief is, which is how might we equip urban citizens of India with access, ability, knowledge, and motivation to form informed choices with a receptive mindset. So, here throughout the presentation, we will talk about each of these keywords and highlight how each of these keywords has played a pivotal role into how we finally come down to our solution. And then comes taking a look at what the market offers. There are quite a few interesting products out there, some applications, some community portals that have some really good MLAI technologies to root out fake news, or somebody who promotes having debates. And yeah, so this is an overview of the products that we studied. And yeah, after this, I'll let my partner Aditi take over.
thank you so much, Kasturi, for defining a problem and the project. So after having an idea of the overall context, then our next goal was to understand what people actually think and how do they behave. So we went ahead with our primary research with a certain set of questions in our mind that we wanted to find the answers of through our primary research. These were majorly focused upon to understand how do people actually consume news, and to understand the receptivity in their mind when it comes to difference of opinions. What is it that creates bias in their minds, and how do people believe something, and this action of forwarding messages that is very much common in today's time, and also what is it that drives the people to take action, and do they even take action when they find something suspicious or not. So, to get a detailed idea of this, we made use of four tools or techniques. That is, we started with a questionnaire, followed by an in-depth interviews with people, and two experiments or studies that I'll touch upon later. So we created a questionnaire. The major agenda was to understand the news consumption pattern of people, and we received around 300 responses for a questionnaire, and there were very interesting insights that we received. The major ones that, like, social media has become a very popular source of news these days. Also, there was an age relationship between age and news consumption, as in, like, digital news sources are more prominent in like younger age groups. Also, like, when it comes to the older age groups, they find their news sources extremely reliable, while younger age groups might they do have idea of fake news or false news. And one major insight that I would like to highlight is this, that over half of the people do not report a news even if they find it suspicious on social media. So basically there's this lack of motivation of action that is being observed over here. When it came to personal interviews, so we conducted semi-structured interviews with people of different age groups, and we also asked them case specific questions based on creating some scenarios and asking them how would they have behaved in such scenarios. And our major insights over here was that there is a age related relationship, as in, like, with age we saw that the receptivity in the minds of people keeps on, like, sort of decreasing. So, as I've already discussed, that social media has become a major source of information when it comes to all age groups. And when it comes to fact checking, so a very less proportion of people actually follow a fact checking process before sharing or forwarding anything. Memes have also become a source of news these days, funnily. And yeah, receptivity tends to decrease with increase in age. And one major thing that we found out is that most of the people are aware, of news, are not really much aware of news, but they really want to. So there's this lack of awareness that is observed, but the willingness to be aware. So we did a very interesting activity to understand we understood what do they consume, but now we wanted to understand what they want to consume. So we came up with a slightly varied version of card sort experiment, and we told our participants to design their own newspaper, giving them some snippet of news and telling them to basically just design their own newspaper. So the basic idea was to understand what actually makes sense to them, what is actually relevant to them, what they want to highlight and what they do not want to. So this was an indirect way to get into their minds actually, which we designers always try to do, I guess. And we followed a think aloud protocol regarding this with the same. There was another social experiment that we did, which was that we created a fake WhatsApp forward and we forwarded it in different groups just to see how people would react to it. And we like lead this forward in family groups or like our college groups to understand how like different age groups react to it. And there were very interesting key insights that include that people prefer balance of news, and people want news that is directly relevant to them, which is opposed to what they actually receive. And when it comes to the younger generation, so they know the typical look and feel of a WhatsApp fake forward or any false news, but the older age group is more quick to believe in such fake news. uh, so these are some insights. Yeah, Kasturi, I guess you can take ahead from here.
Right. Thanks. So now this is the junction where we have quite a lot of research done, but now we have to make sense of it. So me and Aditi, we had to collaborate virtually online because this was the heat of the entire corona wave. And so we used a tool called Miro and Excel sheets to our advantage. And so what we did was we wrote down every single thing, every single insight that we thought made sense. And then we started grouping it differently and seeing clubbing it together to see the main topics. So you can see we have insights on social media or social opinions or interest and motivation or news preferences for that matter. And that is when we start boiling down these insights to our solution. But before jumping on to the solutions, we realize that hey, we need to take a step back, and it's a huge target audience that we are trying to reach out to, and there are different sorts of people. We can't create buckets just based on age or just based on a couple of factors. So to make more sense of what is out there, we try to do it the Bollywood way. So these are some of the categories of our citizens. I think the images will speak for themselves. So Baldev Singh, who is the stubborn mindset. Then we have Lakshman Pandey from Rang De Basanti, who has a strong bias in mind. Is young but has a strong bias. Then we have Shashi Godbole, who is a housewife, and she has a receptive mindset. Her bias is a little low, but so is her confidence. Then Rani Mehra, who is a little gullible. She's very open to change. She's very motivated, but little gullible. Then Nana, who would be our protagonist, is somebody who's very enthusiastic and who we see to be as one of the ideal people. She's very open to change, very motivated as well. And then finally, our hero, who is Shivaji Rao Gaikwad from Nayak, and he's the leader. He's the well-informed mindset. Right. So now, this is when we come to ideation and brainstorming. So we realize that what is it that we truly want to do? We have started this process, but it had this as a moment to stop and think that okay, we want to make sure that we have a lasting social change. And then when you talk about social changes, it's easy to say this is what we want to achieve, but we don't know if it's working. So which is why it was important to have some more near-term outcomes that tell us that okay, maybe we're on the right path. And then finally is to have some key shifts in mind, because when we're talking about psychology and mindsets and about all the plethora of people in an entire country, some key shifts, sorry, need to be identified. Right. So this is just a quick screenshot of us collaborating virtually, thinking out loud, and it's also the place where our visual identity comes to birth. Right. So now at this point of time, we have a lot of ideas, we have a lot of solutions in mind. But how do we make sure if they're worth it or if we can go ahead with them? So we used a method called GMTS, which is goals, methods, tools, channels, and solutions. We wrote down all our solutions and we started categorizing them. We started seeing which solution is the most effective, which has depth, which is plausible. So this is just a brain dump of all of the ideas that we had, and then that is when we started marking it according using this tool GMTS cards. So you can take a cursory look. Yeah. And now this is the point where we have narrowed down our concepts and we realize that, okay, there are main four solutions solution areas that we will work in. First would be the social media campaign. Second would be a print media campaign, a digital tool, and then finally community interactions, which we will talk about in detail moving on. Right. So I'll take a pause here because it's a busy slide, and I'll let viewers just quickly take a look before I resume speaking. Right. So this is what we aim to do, right? This tool from IDEO, it helps make sense of the entire web of ideas that we have in our head. So what is the impact that we want to do, and then we finally come down to outcomes, interim outcomes, outputs, and then finally the solution components. Right. So here we want to stress that we don't have four solutions. We have one solution that has four parts, and when all of these work together in tandem, that's when we have the solution sweet spot. Because it's such a wide area that we are trying to cover, we also felt that no one solution could truly justify and do justice to the problem we are trying to target. Right. So the first one is, funnily enough, a social media campaign. So it's not just a campaign, and we've laid down quite a lot of metrics that we want to track, and how do we know that we are really making progress, the kind of messaging we want to send out there. But to tell you the gist of it, what do we aim to do with this component, right? So not only create awareness that there's fake news out there, but also promote discussion among people and promote this culture of reporting. Since social media is so new, we are a consume more than create economy. So what can we do to give this slight nudge to start people to becoming more active? And a target audience here is the cognitive bias mindset. And why do I put him there, right? Because people of this category, they're not likely to engage in a lot of debate with people they don't agree to. So a slight nudge is more effective than a full blown out response against anybody in particular, right? So the second is the print and television campaign. So easiest thing is that social media does not reach everybody, and we've seen pockets and groups of audience according to different age. So a print and television campaign would ideally solve this. And moving on to the third one, this is where I think I'll pass on the baton to Aditi and let her continue.
Okay, thank you so much, Kasturi. So our third component is quite unique, as in it follows a spatial design approach. So we had this idea in mind that, like as you can see, that we do not really like want to serve on the plate uh, to the users that okay, this is fake, this is not, or something like that. But rather, we want them to be capable enough to understand and then act accordingly on whatever news is put on their plate, right? So this was one such solution, that is to promote community interaction so that people discuss and debate and are comfortable with exchanging their thoughts and being receptive to difference in opinions. Like we had this idea of what, like if we think in the direction of spatial design or architecture or urban design, as in like having some multi-generational discussion spaces, like we could maybe you reuse public spaces like schools or libraries to hold such discussions, or maybe they could be discussion or interaction cafes or some communication workshops and events. So this was the main point in this component. And when it comes to the targeted audience, so we have both the receptive or the low confidence and the high confidence, or the stubborn mindset over here. That is what we want to encourage, right? Bringing the people together and sort of promoting the sharing of opinions. Our fourth component is a digital tool. So where this is where our UX design skills come into play. So this is sort of an application based solution wherein we want to give content, relevant content to the user, uh, and also enhance their awareness and knowledge, along with giving them a platform to take action. So I'll speak of this in detail in later parts. And this has more to do with the younger age groups, I would say. So out of these four components, there are two on which we have started working upon. First one being the social media campaign. So we did talk to few experts and understood how these campaigns actually take place, and we sort of laid out a step-by-step campaign strategy for the same. And yeah, right now, like we have started with a little step, that is we have created our Instagram pages. We have also touched upon Facebook and Twitter. So our basic idea is to basically post stuff so that people understand this new normal of false news, fake news, suspicious news, and to slowly encourage them to not only identify them but also to take action upon the same. So this is something in building. So you can also search and follow us. Coming on to the last component, that is the digital tool. So basically, this is in the form of a mobile application. It provides content to the users in form of clickable cards. So this content is in various media, that is in the form of articles or videos or podcasts, etc. So that the user is engaged. Basically, there are different forms of uh, presentation of the content as per the user choice, and the user can read, listen, see, save, and even share the content with other people. Yeah. So there's this whole plethora of categories into which the user can go and understand news. There are different news categories based on which the user can see the type of content. So that is there. And so the main aspect of the digital tool is its spinner feature. So as you can see, our identity design that we have followed, which is like a sunset sort of thing, which is sort of a logo of Jab Jago Tab Savera. So when you pull this pull this icon upwards. So there's this spinner, and it provides bite-sized, unique content formats of information, and it is like a randomized content, especially in the today's news normal, wherein people have very short attention spans in this world of Instagram, wherein people prefer scrolling and want to see different sort of content randomly. So we sort of tapped that user behavior and sort of inculcated this in our solution. So this content can be in various formats. So we sort of played around with different formats. It can be in the form of rolling cards. So this is one example of, let's say, when we want to educate our users as to how to identify fake news, and there are like 10 easy steps to do that. So it is in the form of rolling cards, when one can visualize and even read relevant information. Then they can be short videos, or they can be quick quizzes so as to enhance their knowledge. So the user also develops confidence. So as we talked about Shashi, the character of Shashi, so like these things actually help the user build on information and even have the courage to share the information ahead. Can be in the form of articles, etc. So as I already mentioned, that it is a collection of randomized creative content formats, easy to consume even when the user is busy. One major aspect that we're taking care of here is that we are not just providing a platform or an opportunity to learn, but also to contribute. That is, there is the section of action which brings in picture different organizations or communities that are already working on, such fake news related movements, etc. So the user can have a look at them and also participate and share with others, so as to encourage others to also participate in such events. So the major idea here is to encourage community level engagement. So well, that's it. And we have tried to sort of document our process on in the form of medium blogs as well. And yeah, I would just like to end here that arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. Thank you. We
Yeah.
Thank
quite
you,
a lot of
Aditi.
time.
Thank you, Kasturi. It was a wonderful to understand this project. It's quite thoughtful and need of the hour. So I'm gonna request again.
Or a news Insta, or like a Insta news kind of a thing. The thought that came to my mind is, have you tested this approach? Have you designed it in the way it needs to be so that if this has to become a reality, this will work. And if you have to stand by the statement, will this work? What are your thoughts? What have you done in that direction?
I'll go ahead and take this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So I see that there are two parts of the question. So I'll start with talking about the behavioral change, right? I think that is also one thing that was a truly big challenge for us. So as to what are our north stars, what are our near stars, how do we know if we are making a change? Which is why we thought that when all of these solution components work in tandem, for example, it's not just about a digital platform, but it's also about the community-based interactions. So we, throughout these four solutions, what we aim to do is have multiple touch points, although they may not be the most effective, and of course that we could find that out with only a lot of rigorous testing, and we are going ahead with a lot of assumptions. But what we aim to do is that we have these touch points wherein we try to tap into this mindset and say that at least get people to acknowledge that there is a bias, and then perhaps then that's a different journey altogether whether that shift happens or not. But the first step is to acknowledge and understand that there is a problem at hand, or this is, hey, this is how I think. Secondly, when it comes to testing, we haven't been able to do lots of usability testing to see, hey, is this people, how people use it, or how will they react with it. But yeah, that's definitely on our plates.
Because I feel you guys need to really design for bringing in a behavioral change, which is much more psychology driven. And you did kind of a bit of deep dive into understanding the psyche, which reflects in your personas. Again, I feel the design could be a lot more different than what it is, because my immediate perception that this was almost like an Instagram of news, or a news, almost like a news app, another news app, just by the perception of what I'm seeing there. Versus if I want to really brand it as, then whatever you get to read here is one, which is that positive thing, which was your number one criteria, that it needs to be positive. Uh, where I should be ready to let go of my Times of India app. I should be ready to let go of my InShots app. I should be ready to quit looking at news forwards on my WhatsApp. That's the behavioral change, if you really ask me, needs to be done. And for that, um, yeah, you may have multiple campaign and all the other stuff, but I think when I pick up a product, it needs to induce that wow. It needs, the change starts with that first step of picking up the product. So the perception of your product needs to be through the design, more than your, those slides that you said, hey, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. That's instruction and gyan, right? Our parents have been giving us a lot of gyan. We don't change till we experience something within, and then realize, oh yeah, I remember hearing this instruction when I was 10 years old, or whatever it is, right? So behavioral change really comes in, um, when the end user witnesses something that it touches them, and that thing will not come through instruction but through the design which is induced, right? So think about it. It's not a question, but it's a suggestion, because uh, you nailed it through your research, um, through your empathy with the users and what they go through. I feel the design needs to still kind of, uh, and I think maybe you guys struggled. My assumption is you guys struggled probably to give it that kind of a time and justice to really chisel it out. And it's almost like a play, right? You write the script, you spend years writing the script, and finally it's there. But then you're scrambling to put everyone onto the stage and get going, and you have a deadline coming up. So never mind. So work on this, because uh, uh, I don't think anyone is working on this area as well, and just like the previous project as well. So those are my few thoughts, and if you guys have any questions for me.
Yeah, we have a question for you. So our question is that if we want to like actually launch our digital tool in the market in near future, so how would we go about the revenue generation aspect of it. Also, when it comes to such social innovation products which do not provide any tangible service, so how does they incur revenue, especially without advertising?
So, uh, yeah, but I really like the way Facebook initially started. Right? They clearly, and I'm not sure if you guys saw the movie Social Network. It clearly kind of establishes the way he was very clear. This is a service. I don't care about anything else. Of course, and then you saw his then business partner trying to get into advertising and getting revenue and all of that stuff, and it didn't work out. Um, because you're bringing in a certain behavioral change, if it has merit, people will come running behind you for investment, and that's how you would make money. It's not about, okay, it's like a paid app. Because it's a behavioral change, it needs to be adopted by people falling in love with it. And that's the power of design, and that will where the behavioral change will bring in that. Look at it, right? All of us in this particular room right now, the virtual room, everyone knows I want to look at positive news. Everyone, it's right deep within here, right? And every day when we read the news, this got killed, that got killed, the car ran over this fellow, or blah blah blah. And look at it, right? Today's news, we saw that, and we don't know who was the driver. And I'm assuming you guys are watching that news. What happened in Punjab, where this driver ran over 4 or 5 people and they were killed, and no one knows who was the driver. And he ran, and people ran behind him. Oh, okay. What happened after that? No one knows the truth. Someone says they were BJP guys. Someone says they were Congress guys. Someone said no, they were farmers and this guy. What not? Now we don't know what's the truth. Now, one, how do you create a system to bring this truth out, and what is the package with this truth could come out where people really feel this is genuine news? And it's not an easy job to induce that thought, because even Times of India sends that news out, and in shorts gives you that news, but you feel still have that question mark as to what is real truth. And then how would you design? And when I say design, it's not just the pictures and the layout, but the text that you write there, or maybe the authenticity score, if you will, that tells that, yeah, this is still not validated news, or this is half validated news, um, uh, or this what we are talking about is completely fake. How do you design? It's a amazing design problem to solve, and you'll really have to meditate over it, and test it very rigorously, very genuinely, not fall in love with your designs. uh, quite some quite some time that you would need to spend on this to really get to the truth, because if it then happens, then it'll have its impact, and that's what you want to do, right? You want to really create an impact. And all the, even the previous project, right? Both of you, it's something that you want to really have an impact on a larger scale. And as it's not easy. Good ideas uh, are good unless they really see the light of the day and users say, hey, I really love it, it has made an impact on my life or my thought process. So long long story short, revenues will come, people will come running behind you with funding. Don't worry about that. um, but I think if you want to do that genuine service, and the way you have done this whole background studies and psychology and all of that stuff, let it reflect to the design. The design needs to say, oh, I want to pick this up right now. Usually that has what has happened, right? InShot became successful because they exactly looked at the problem of, sports news, geography, US, Alana, Falana, Bollywood, everything thrown at them through the Times of India's type of apps. But then InShot really looked at, hey, people don't have time, as you rightly also said. They just want to slide, look at the news and go on. But now you look at it, even InShot is falling short of that aha moment that you guys are wanting to create in the minds of the users. Sure, wonderful. All of you have a great careers ahead. At any point of time, if you feel, hey, you know what's next? I feel stuck. I want to have a conversation. Feel free to reach out. Um, and thanks for giving us this time and insight. Very helpful. Well, Vedang, Madhura team, thanks for arranging this. It's been always a pleasure to host the next set of UX consultants in the globe.
Well, thank you, Prasad, for your insights.
Thank you.
And I'll cut the session here. Yeah. So, congratulations to all the winners again, and all the best for your future endeavors. Hope you had a good experience participating in this competition. It was great interacting with you all. So, thank you and have a great day ahead.